Hi, it's Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, and I'm back with my plans and pans. I began 4th of July weekend on July 1st when Prospect Heights had its parade, and I was invited to be the Grand Marshal. That was quite an honor, and I rode with the mayor of Prospect Heights, and we had a wonderful, wonderful time seeing lots of people despite the kind of inclement weather. It was drizzling occasionally and stopped now and then, but people were still out on the streets, and I was happy to be able to toss some candy the way toward the children. On the 4th of July, I was at two parades, one in Skokie and one in my hometown of Evanston, both of which were canceled last year because of the tragedy in Highland Park. All of the parades, not just in our neighborhood, but all around, were canceled. Even the fireworks in many places were canceled because of that horrible, horrible mass shooting that killed so many people and also traumatized thousands, really thousands of others, and injured many as well. This was also the week of 3 Supreme Court decisions, 6-3 decisions, all of which I found very unfortunate. One ended President Biden's student loan debt relief program that would have affected 40 million Americans. And by the way, these are not only students or younger people, but we know that there are people well into their 50s, even 60 years old, that are still trying to pay off their student debts. This is a real blow to a lot of families and individuals who have been struggling to pay these debts. 60% of Americans think it would be a good idea to give the student loan debt relief. And it is not only good for them, but it is good for our economy. If we want to be competitive in the world, we want to make sure that higher education, that continuing your education is something affordable for all Americans. There is a Plan B that President Biden has announced. Actually, the Secretary of Education has authority to make moves that could enable, once again, student debt relief. And so we want to see that explored and anything that can be done to make sure that college is affordable and remains affordable to those who choose to go there. Another of the Supreme Court decisions goes directly after the LGBTQ plus community. So a woman who called herself a website designer decided that she did not want to have to provide any services for people who were asking help to promote their marriage, a same-sex marriage. The very idea that someone publicly advertises themselves to provide a service, that service should be available to anyone who asks for it, who is willing to pay money, who signs up for it legitimately, and to decide that there are those customers that you can reject when you are advertising yourself to the public should not be legal. And then the third case is about affirmative action, the idea that race can be used as a criteria for entrance into schools to create diversity and to make sure that all students are equally able to get into college. Well, 2/3 of Americans actually believe that that is a good policy and support it. But now the Supreme Court says that race cannot be a criteria. My hope is that there are some ways to make sure that we continue to have diversity, but this is a very devastating blow to make sure that all people of all races, of all colors, are able to get into colleges. It will mainly affect Black and brown people. But the case was also decided to allow that military academies are able to use racial diversity in choosing the students. And the rationale there was that it was healthy for these academies to have racial diversity and that it was good for national security to have that. And I think it is very peculiar to make that kind of divide when it comes just to military academies and not to the rest of the country. As I said, most Americans agree with that, and I think this is heading backwards kind of decision by the Supreme Court. Again, a 6-3 decision, and I am hoping that as time goes on, we're going to be able to make sure, affirm that in the United States of America, diversity is a value, a positive value for advancing our country forward. Last week, I had the privilege of joining the President of the United States when he was in Chicago to speak to a group of people at the old post office site. It's beautiful, by the way. It's no longer the post office, but it's a beautiful old building. And I was thrilled to hear what he had to say. He created a new word, and it is called Bidenomics. That is the economic policy of the Biden administration, which is that we build our economy and we build our middle class from the middle out and the bottom up, and no more relying on trickle-down economics. He says, I've been waiting for trickle-down and it never comes. That is, that when the wealthy do well, that somehow it's going to trickle down to the rest of us. No. And Joe Biden has already given us examples of what that means. During the Biden administration, there have been 13 million new jobs created. That is more in just 2 years than any other president in a full 4 years of his administration has ever been created. And we also are seeing that unemployment is at an absolute record low right now, and that there have been 10.5 million applications to form new small businesses. So under his leadership, all the sectors of our economy are doing better. That is Bidenomics. And when the president talked about jobs, he wasn't just talking about any job. He was talking about union jobs, good paying jobs for people. You know, lots of people are working jobs, sometimes 2 jobs and 3 jobs. But he is talking about good wages for Americans, especially through the help of labor organizing. And speaking of that, I went to a work action in front of the Starbucks store in my neighborhood. I attended this job action because I am not only a member of Congress who believes in the rights of workers to organize, but because I am a member of Workers United, the union that is organizing the Starbucks workers. In fact, in 300 Starbucks stores around the country, the workers have already organized and are now pressing to be able to get a contract. And Starbucks has been refusing them. So not only are there issues about wages, about working conditions, but we also know that Starbucks has taken down anything reflecting the LGBT community and Pride Month, anything that symbolized the support for the workers there or for the community. They were saying any one of those flags, any of those posters had to be taken down. So the fact that Starbucks is not only not willing to give the benefits and working conditions to their workers, but they won't even allow for them to express their support and the majority support for the LGBTQ community. So this week, I went to the groundbreaking for an organization called Sarah's Circle that focuses on providing permanent housing for homeless women. And about 30% of the homeless in the United States are women. And so this beautiful place that's about to be built, I was happy to take a shovel and begin this new building for Sarah's Circle. Then they will have a total of 100 permanent housing sites for women in the Chicago area. So it was a moment of hope, of hard work, of inspiration to see that this work is going on. But also, I think it represents a real failure that we have right now in this country, that there are so many people who are without permanent housing. And in that regard, I also went to the Respite Center, which is sponsored by Niles Township and is housed at the St. Paul Lutheran Church in Skokie. And it provides a place for homeless men to be able to come for short stays. They are able to sleep there during the day. They're given clothing, they're given some snacks, and are given some level of counseling to help them out. The other thing I learned at the Niles Township Respite Center from the Niles Township supervisor was that 10% of the population of Niles Township, which includes Skokie and a number of other suburbs of the city of Chicago, that 10% of the residents rely on food pantries as their principal source of putting food on the table, of nutrition. And I just want to say that after visiting Sarah's Circle and the Respite Center and hearing that, I'm so upset by the idea that here we are, the richest country in the world, at the richest time in history. We can certainly afford to make sure that Americans have enough food, that we help get affordable housing to everyone in this country. I think I've told you before that there are 3 families in the United States of America that have a bit more wealth than the bottom 50% of the population. So when we say we're a successful nation and we're the richest country in the world, this is not something felt by the vast majority of Americans, because in addition to those who may be without homes or without food on the table, it is also true that there are so many Americans right now that are facing anxiety in case of one crisis that they face, be it healthcare, be it a failure of their car, be it an accident. Something happens, and there are so many families just struggling to make it in America. That's why I'm so excited about Bidenomics, the idea that we're going to make our economy more equitable, more equal, more available for everyday families and for the poor to be able to live a life of dignity in this richest country in the world. On a note of progress in our country, I wanted to let you know about an event I went to celebrate the beginning of higher speed rail between Chicago and St. Louis, 110 miles an hour. So it'll take shorter time to get there, but there'll also be a renovation of the station and the tracks, and it's going to be a very important project. So I am looking forward to more and more innovations that we're going to be seeing, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where my handle is @Jan Schakowsky.